Majora's Mask is probably one of the most unique Zelda games, at least one of the most unique 3D Zelda games, but that's only because of the world, the characters, and some of the mechanics, like, for example, the masks and the whole time system. I really do think this game does a whole lot right, despite not being my favorite game, or my favorite Zelda game, but I think it's pretty high up there. But no, I'll be referring to the N64 version, just because I haven't touched the 3DS version, and I thought that one's a bit easier than the N64 version, so I kind of want to base it off that, because there are some changes that I saw in the 3DS version that I don't fully agree with, and again I've heard it's generally a little bit easier, which I don't mind, but I really do like the difficulty of the N64 version a bit more, so I'll just be basing off my review of the game on that version. But let's actually get into the video, and one of the first things I really love is the dungeons, because one of the things I actually look for in a Zelda game is how well the dungeons are, and I think Majora's Mask has some of the best dungeons in a 3D Zelda game. The 4 dungeons in the game I feel have the right level of difficulty, like if you stop and think for a minute you can actually figure out where to go, and then I also feel that since it's also on the timer, you can actually figure out the game quicker on your toes, and I feel like it just adds a little bit more to the difficulty. But again, the other half is just because I feel like they have some really nice parts there, and I think if you just again take a minute, breathe, and figure out what to do next, you can actually figure these out pretty easily. For example, I think the Snowboy Temple is really nice because you have to walk around the main center pillar, figure out how to get higher and get to the boss door, while also keeping the center pillar I think raising down or up, I can't remember, but still you have to walk around that. And then there's also the Stone Tower Temple, which if it's right side up makes it seem pretty hard, but then again it just makes you look around at your surroundings, and even when it's flipped down or flips upside down, you can just figure out oh well, since this chest was upside down the first time, now I can actually go get it and then finish the dungeon. Something else I really like that's related to the dungeons have to be the stray fairies. This to me makes the dungeons way cooler to explore, and it actually makes you think about every possible location in the dungeon to find these things, and frankly when you actually do find them, I think it's really rewarding just because some of the rewards that the fairies give you are really good. For example, when you defeat the Snowhead or Snow Point Temple, you actually get a double magic meter and some other rewards, I think in the Stone Tower one you actually get a better sword, which only goes to the C button, but still I think the sword, if I remember correctly, is still pretty strong, but still, the rewards can be pretty useful. Then there's also the side quests, which I think for the most part are really interesting. If not in most cases, you actually get to learn about the different parts in the world and other people's struggles and just stuff like that. I think, again, not all of them are the most greatest to do or the most funnest to do, but again, I think most of them are pretty memorable. For example, the side quest at the Long Long Ranch, the cafe side quest, and there's a bunch of other ones that I can't think of at the moment, but still, a lot of them are still kind of cool if I don't remember all of them at the current moment. The mechanic I also really like was the mask, and frankly, I think it's one of the cooler things that the series has done. And I know not all of them are anything special, but I think whenever they do get used, some of the interactions can be pretty funny. For example, I think the ghost guy, where he's near the snow area, the one where the dancing ghost, I'm trying to describe it the best I can, but that guy, once you actually get his mask, you are able to help out to 2 dancers in Clock Town, and then you can get a piece of heart. That one isn't too long of a quest, but still I think it's kind of interesting and at least kind of fun to see. And then there's some other masks I kind of like the blast mask, which gives you a free bomb, the bunny hood, which basically helps you move faster, and then the stone mask, which I kind of find funny just because it makes you invisible to some enemies. And there were just a bunch of other masks that would just have some really cool effects, which I really like. And I think, again, this is one of the cooler mechanics that was introduced in Zelda, but it's never brought back just because I guess they didn't really need it, but whatever. Then the most interesting mechanic I think the game has, and I think if you know Majora's Mask, you would know what that is, and it's the time system. And frankly, I think again this is actually one of the best systems introduced just because of how they handled it. I find the game a bit more stressful just because of this, and it makes you think on your toes a lot faster, and it can make you learn more about the world. By this, you can actually learn when NPCs do whatever they want and whenever they want, and it actually can make you still feel a bit more connected. It's a very limited way of expanding the world, but frankly I think how the game was made, since they actually had not a lot of time to do it, it still makes it feel really alive. It also has certain events that you can actually do. For example, I think a mini game actually changes on certain days. Like I think the one with the bombs and the bomb shoes in one of the clock down plots changes on each day, and you can actually get a certain mask at a certain time. And frankly, I find all that really cool, and I think the world is really somewhat well lived in, despite the fact that like you can only see it in 3 days, and just that kind of sucks. But again, I think they actually made it really cool just with a limited development time. Even though that this game had a super limited development time, I still do think that this game has some pretty cool ideas, and if it didn't have that development time, there's no way in hell that we would have had half of these ideas. But still, even though that is really cool, like a lot of the ideas I've said, it still kind of suffers in some ways where it just drags on. As for example, my next point, as I just said, the pacing is just really bad sometimes. The two areas where I felt it suffered a lot was the Great Bay and the Stone Tower Temple. It's just everywhere leading up to it. But Snow Point can kind of be included, but to a lesser degree. But the first two areas that I mentioned is really annoying just because it has some really annoying parts to it. Like for example, in Great Bay, getting these Zelda eggs can be super annoying because you only really have like at that point just a few bottles if you don't go out of your way to collect them, and that just really sucks. And the Stone Town Temple has a lot of problems. Like for example, when you're just climbing it, you actually have to have like a lot of different items on at the same time. You have to have the Zola mask, the Gohan mask, the Ocarina, the hook shot, and it's just really annoying because you only have 3 buttons to actually use your equipment, and you have to constantly swap between them, and it just ruins the pacing of that part. But frankly, the music here is still really good, but it just sucks that again the pacing just kind of sucks. And frankly, again, as I said before, I really do think the masks are cool, but I feel like some of them just kind of felt shafted in some way. And not to mention it, again, they have really little use outside of some really key events. Stuff like the Keaton mask only giving like 1 piece of hull. It is a good reward, but after you do that 1 quiz, you just can never use it again, and it just serves almost very little purpose, which kind of sucks because again, a lot of these masks are pretty cool design wise. There's another thing that I really didn't like, and that had to be the dungeons items, and frankly, I think it's some of the most uninteresting ones we got out of the 3D Zelda games. It's pretty much just arrow upgrades, which isn't bad, but I feel like it just makes all the dungeons feel kind of samey in the end. You actually get some of the dungeons, or most of the dungeon items that you would usually get in other Zelda games, like the hook shot, and just some other ones, like I think the bombs and stuff like that, outside of the dungeons, and frankly, I still think it's kind of cool, but at the same time, you're expected to get the ice arrows, the fire arrows, and the light arrows all in the dungeons that you actually explore, and frankly, I just think that kind of sucks, at least in comparison to some other Zelda games. Last thing I really disliked was how lacking Majora was as a villain. It doesn't really have a presence in the game since, a lot of the time, the problems in the different area are just random one-off problems that I don't really think they were even affected by Majora. I know his plan was to crash the moon into the land, but frankly, it just doesn't really happen till, again, the end of the game, and even then you stop it. But I admit, it's a good, plot kind of, at least from just seeing what the villain wants to do. But again, the villain doesn't really do much, and he just maybe casually screws over some people, but frankly, it's just not really that big of a deal to me, because frankly, he just doesn't really do anything to Link, because Link is just there, and he wants to do the good thing, and frankly, I think that just kind of sucks. So, Majora Mask just kind of suffer in the story aspect, since some of the other games I feel actually have a way better story. But other than those issues, I really do think this game is super satisfying to finish, that in the dungeons and the side quests, and frankly, it's again one of the most satisfying to finish, and it's frankly probably high up there in my favorite 3D Zeldas, just because to me it's really fun to play. And I really hope you give it a try regardless of the version. But before we end the video, let's actually go over the likes and dislikes. Likes: great dungeons, great mechanics, and fun side quests. Dislikes: bad pacing at points, underused masks, interesting dungeon items, at least in comparison to other games, and bad main villain. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys later.